we now need to add a junction feather to our down approach signal. Now feathers are not currently defined in the mast system, so we have to add it manually. We'll create a signal head for the feather, and this is just a single output decoder which can have either the feather is illuminated or it's not illuminated. So we give it a system name, which is just a number starting IH, so IH33, and we're going to call it feather. The reason I gave it 33 is it's very similar to the 30 sequence used for the rest of the signals on the same mast. And we'll just set the appearance when it's thrown to be yellow, or actually when it's closed to be yellow. It doesn't matter technically which we use. Okay, that's created our feather, which we can change state between flashing, dark and yellow. When we come to use it, we'll only be using the dark and the yellow states. Now, if we look back at our layout, what we need to do is create some rules for our feather. The first thing we'll do is put the feather onto the panel. We'll just add the signal head called feather. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit and use an existing mast shape, which happens not to be designed for a feather, but looks rather like one. So we position that there. As you can see, when it's illuminated, it's got that nice sort of diagonal appearance. And what I'm going to do now is just make it disabled, which means when you click on it nothing happens. This is quite useful because it saves you accidentally clicking on the feather and causing it to change state. So to the rules. This is where we introduce some logics for the rules, and what we need to do is open up the start of the logics. We need to give it a username. Let the system generate a name for it because I don't think it matters too much. We'll call the logic's name feather. Seems reasonable. And what we now get is quite a tall window, which when you look at it, you create a new condition. Now the first condition we're going to create is the conditions for when the feather should illuminate. And there are several possible states of the signals on the track which might cause the feather to illuminate. Now obviously the signal needs to be in either the yellow or the call-on state to go down the bay, and the turnout needs to be set to go down the bay. So the first variable we're going to set is going to be, we'll set the signal. We'll look at the signal mast first of all. So we say we're going to look at the signal mast. We pick the signal mast from the signal mast table, and we're interested in the state of the down approach mast. So we drag that into the thing, and we're interested in the aspect, which could be caution. That's one of the states we're interested in. We're also interested in whether it's going to be set to call on. So again, we'll go through and look at the mast, drag the name from the table, pick the state variable, and we'll be setting it to the off state, which is used by the call on signal. So that's the possible states of the signal mast, and then we're interested in the state of the turnout into the bay platform. So we're set to turnout, which is turnout from the pick list. We're interested in the bay platform turnout and when it's thrown into the bay. Now next bit is the logic. Now we want mixed logic in this case because what we want is either of the signals, so that's the first one or the second one, and the turnout mast. We now have to add to the action. In this case it's going to be to illuminate the signal head, the feather. So we'll pick the signal head from the drop list, and we pick the signal head from our pick list table. So we find the feather head, we drag it into the box, and we want to set the signal head appearance, and we want to set it to yellow, and we'll be doing it when the conditions change to true. So we update that, and we need to give it a name just to help ourselves later on, so we'll call this feather lit, and we'll now update the conditional. So that's got one for lighting the feather. Okay, the next thing we need to do is a way of making the feather go dark again. So what we do is create a second conditional. This time the name's going to be feather dark, seems a logical thing to call it, and we're interested in possible things that could cause the feather to go dark. Now, two things could happen. One is the turnout could be set against us, and the other is that our signal mast might be displaying a colour which we're not interested in, such as red. So we'll look at the down approach mast and we'll see what signal aspect, if it's set to danger, that would be a reason to not illuminate the feather, and another reason would be if the turnout into the bay is set for the main line. So we pick the turnout from the turnout table, pick the bay turnout, drag it over, and if it's set to closed. Now in this case it's going to be either or of these two situations, and the action we want is to take our signal head, which is called feather, and we're going to want to make it to go dark. As I said, the actions are going to be an OR, so we change the logical operation to OR, so it's either the signal mast is red or the bay platform is closed. We click done on those, and it reminds us we need to save everything when we're finished. And if we pull the logics box away and have another look at our layout underneath, and we can see the pictures of the signal. Now, as you can see, as we're changing the turnouts, the feather will illuminate correctly. Now there is a slight little quirk we need to look at, which is when the bay platform is occupied. This is what will cause the call-on light to appear. So let's have a look what happens when the bay platform is occupied. You notice that the feather is just flashing on and off a tiny bit as we flick between the main line and back into the bay. We're actually seeing the feather flash, and then it goes to red, then the call-on comes on with the feather. We clearly have something very slightly wrong with the way our logical rules are operating. So what we will do is go and start editing our logics to try and see what is causing this little flash. So we go back into the logics and we select the edit, and we look at our two rules within the conditionals. The first one is the lit one, which is where the problem lies. Now if you look at the table, we have a column in the upper table labelled trigger calculation over towards the right. So as we just resize it, we can see that all three things can trigger the calculation, but if we remove the turnout change from triggering the calculation, so it's only when the signals change state is the calculation triggered, then the movement of the turnout can't cause the feather to change its state. So we save those, close it off, click done, we'll get the reminder to save everything. And now if we look at the behaviour, we'll see the little flick has gone. What happens instead is the signal goes through a little red state as the turnout is changed, and then the logic has a think, and when it's decided, it illuminates with a feather.